Another night where the Florida Panthers had a chance to win, but this time, as they were short-handed, the Leafs pulled through late.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Thursday, April 3rd edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Monoman12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers and on Blue Sky at LOFLA Panthers. You can follow the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. Subscribe, and if you're on the YouTube channel, make sure to press that like button down below. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. So, Panther fans, grateful to be back here once again on another edition of the show to talk everything in the world of the Florida Panthers here. And this time for the Panthers, they came into this one short-handed where there was no Aleksander Barkov, no Nico Sturm. They called up Jacob Megna from the AHL, who played 185 games before tonight. Although he was a 2012 7th-round pick, he made his Panthers debut tonight. And a whole bunch of shuffling with Anton Lundell going to the top line, Evan Rodriguez shifting from wing to center, and the Panthers still held their own for the most part. They did not get into a track meet at certain points of the game, eliminating the odd man rushes where Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner were getting to the dirty areas early on, but the Panthers really managed things throughout the middle frame for them. And I mean, you think about Anton Lundell and how he's played in certain games without Aleksander Barkov. He goes from 0.5 points per game to 1.25 points per game whenever he's getting to those top line assignments. And this is a line that we've seen throughout even the postseason, going back to 2023 when him, Etu, and Sam Reinhart were together, and that was the line that made the difference in that second round series against the Leafs. But I want to discuss everything with Jacob Megna a little bit, where it's a bigger body defenseman needed. That this is the type of game for the Panthers where you need in a game and a system that Toronto plays whenever where they've changed their how they play. This is the type of matchup where you need to bang the bodies and battle along the boards where you're not losing the pucks. And the fact that even in this game where you had an AJ Greer and a Tomas Nosek and a Jonah Gadjevich come back into the lineup with Nico Sturm missing out and Barkov. And then obviously the forward lines are a little thin right now, but even that fourth line was starting to get their chances in the game, consistently getting the pucks deep, using their speed to get through. Anthony Stolarz was outstanding on the night, and the Panthers as a team weren't forcing the plays for them. So it was the type of game where, yes, the Florida Panthers get in on the scoring first due to Gustav Forsling and a rocket of a shot, right? And then the Leafs tie up later in that period. And then for them, I mean, Paul Maurice even spoke about it, that he didn't like the first 6 minutes of the period, and he was talking about the 6 minutes that the Leafs didn't even score on for this one. And then that's even though the Panthers played the last 12 minutes well, that was when we saw the Toronto Maple Leafs get in on the score sheet. So there's a little bit of time where where, at least from what Paul Maurice sees, that even though the Panthers play well, it was a few missed assignments there for the Panthers, where on the second goal, the top line of the Leafs pin Carter Verhaeghe to the half wall, and then they get it to the net front, and then Austin Matthews gets it back to Mitch Marner, and then the Panthers later, just a few minutes later, 5 minutes later, lose Matthew Nyes, where he finishes on a breakaway past Sergei Bobrovsky, and he gets beat on the backhand. But as far as the Panthers here, one thing that's very encouraging is how they were able to gain the zone. It wasn't really dumping the puck and chasing for like what we saw against the Montreal Canadiens, which the script sports had a stat after 40 minutes where it said where the Panthers controlled entries were through 40 minutes, and it was at 50%, while the Toronto Maple Leafs were at 39% for them. And for the Panthers, one encouraging thing for them is the two goals that they scored were off the cycle. Seth Jones was a big part of the first goal scored, getting it back to the point, and then Mackie Samoskevich fooling Austin Matthews before getting it back to Sam Reinhart on the power play. That's the third goal for the Panthers there. And the same thing for the first goal where Seth Jones had it in the corner, and it was another one of fighting off the check of Austin Matthews right before that quick tap from Bennett back cross the zone to Sam Reinhart, and then tapped it to Gustav Forsling on the point for him to get that goal for the Panthers there. So a lot of encouraging things. Yeah, you see 80 shot attempts for the Panthers, and you just think, man, they're getting screens, they're getting second chance opportunities. But I mean, we've seen this movie before with Anthony Stolarz and coming up big, literally, and with the size of that man for what we've seen last season. And just know that how hard it is to just you can't teach size here, but really when it comes down to what happened in the first two games with setting screens and taking the eyes away for him, that's really how the Panthers got their goals and for them. But so that's the encouraging thing about it. But just the little moments where they just lose themselves and then lose the puck in their own end with their inability to break out the puck. So that's the discouraging thing about it. And second line for the Panthers, it's a second straight game where they were unable to make something out of their speed, and the Toronto Maple Leafs did a great job in closing the gaps for them. It's really hard to really judge Brad Marchand on his short tenure, with him coming off an injury and only playing just 3-4 games for the Panthers so far in the season. So that's a little bit of that's a little bit of a waiting period for us when we see how we're officially going to judge Brad Marchand. I mean, for defensemen in Seth Jones, I mean, it was another great game for him, like I said earlier. And so it just takes a little bit of time for this one. Him, Gustav Forsling were outstanding. And like I mentioned, the second line was really that line that was really discouraging on the night, because they had the same amount of shot attempts at 5-on-5, but as far as shots for percentage, they were just at a third of the shots for them. So that's a little bit of a head scratcher for them. And I mean, hey, we could discuss more and more about who they're missing. I mean, now it's 5 guys from the lineup that are missing, 2 defensemen and 3 forwards now for the Panthers. And the fact that this was another game where the Panthers got it close. I mean, you think about for the amount of pressure that it was for the Maple Leafs. So this was a more pressure-packed game for the Leafs, because they're the ones who need the home ice even more than the Panthers do. And the fact that the Panthers went on the road and still had it at a 1-goal game going into the third period, a tie game, excuse me, going into the third period, I think that this is another encouraging thing for where the lineup is right now. Unfortunately, it's tough whenever it's resulting in 0 points. But again, this was something you like to see, where it's a line in the top line of Etsu, Lundell, and Reinhardt that's been together and know where the other is going to be on the ice. And also, I want to give a lot of credit to Evan Rodriguez. He doesn't play a lot of center, but he won 55% of his draws on the night. The Panthers didn't give up a special teams goal against the Leafs, which has been very power play reliant on the season. So that's another thing for them. And that's for the Panthers. It may be a loss, but I'm not angry about it like I was for the game against Montreal. This one, it felt like a scheduled loss for the Panthers, and the fact that they gave themselves a chance. Unfortunately, with 10 minutes left, it was too much of a hill to climb, as the scoring punch has been tough for the Panthers as of late. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we are going to discuss our 3 duds of the game and when we knew the game was lost. We're going to discuss that and more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. And there's nothing like watching basketball live. The energy of the crowd, the sounds of sneakers on the hardwood, and maybe even a celebrity sighting courtside. If you want to watch a game in person, Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever. Game Time's new feature, Game Time Picks, filters out the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time scrolling through thousands of tickets. I just checked the Game Time app, and there are amazing deals on some huge matchups coming up. Game Time Picks even highlights super deals, give you the best bang for your buck. With seat views before you buy, no surprise fees, and the lowest price guarantee, you could book with total confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Segment number 2 here on this Thursday, April 3rd edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Thursday, where the Florida Panthers are coming off a 3-2 regulation loss against the Toronto Maple Leafs on Wednesday night, where it was a nationally televised game in Canada. So the all of the fans north of the border got to see the Stanley Cup champions, a hobbled Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers team, go into Toronto and still gave them a challenge, which still gives the world, the hockey world, signs that the Florida Panthers are in fact still a threat. And I mean it when I say that, when it comes to that. And I know there's a lot of fans who are discouraged as far as the state, but I'm discouraged about the loss, but not discouraged about the state of the team. So let's go with our 3 duds of the game and a moment where we knew the game was lost. So number 3 dud for the Florida Panthers. I spoke about that second line earlier, but number 3, I feel like it's been a consistent theme for having this guy on the duds list. And Carter Verhaeghe, he was a team worst Corsi, 4th worst in shots for, and was that one the player that the top line of the Toronto Maple Leafs, he was the one who lost the puck right before the Leafs tied it, and just how Matthews was able to separate the puck, get it back to the point, and then get it back to Marner, which they were able to retrieve the puck. And honestly, Uvis Balinskis also didn't put Carter Verhaeghe in the best position, knowing that Austin Matthews was going in for the check on the half wall as he tried to rim out the puck. Number 2 dud of the game for me was Nate Schmidt. I didn't think he had the worst of games for him, but losing Matthew Knies in the neutral zone, where Evan Rodriguez was right before, while the puck was still in the Leafs' end, I can understand why Evan Rodriguez went to pick up Austin Matthews, and unfortunately, Nate Schmidt tried a little bit of a pinch, but thinking that there was maybe a little bit of support where Nico Mikkola was near the blue line, but just losing Matthew Knies and then him going on that breakaway just ended a little bit of hope for the Panthers here in their attempt to come back, where they were just once again having a hard time getting the puck on the back of the net. And also a collision between Nate Schmidt and Eetu Luostarinen resulted in a big high danger chance by that top line of the Toronto Maple Leafs early on in the first. And to think, I didn't even mention this part yet, that although the Panthers were hobbled in this one coming in, the Maple Leafs also had their fair share of injuries going in the middle of this game, with David Kemp missing the last bit of the game, and then even Jake McCabe later in the third period, where he went to the locker room uh, after a collision there. Uh, and also that was the guy that AJ Greer beat on a breakaway where unfortunately they weren't able to score on that one. And number one dud for the Florida Panthers here. Uvis Belinskis had basically handed that puck to Willem Nylander on a silver platter, as we've seen it over and over again on just how the moment has just been too big for Uvis Belinskis as of late, where it's just poor breakouts out of the zone. And yeah, for Jacob Megna replacing Tobias Bjornfoot, that for that it's size when it comes to just battling along in the net front. But for Uvis Belinskis, I mean, it's really over and over again that we've seen, and how many times have we said on the show just a poor breakout resulting in a high danger or even a goal. And William Nylander was able to just center it to John Tavares for the game tying goal to make it 1-1. And just once again, he lost that battle at the end boards that resulted in one of the goals for the Leafs. And he was the one who put Carter Hagee in that really tough position at the half wall for him. So that is my number one dud of the game. The moment where we knew the game was lost for the Panthers here, and it was right before the third goal for the the Leafs here, and it was a give and go play by Mackie Semiskevich and Jesper Boquist, and then you see Nico Mikkola going in with a head full of steam with speed, and then across ice feed from Jesper Boquist to Nico Mikkola, and then Anthony Stolarz again makes a stop. And it was multiple times where Anthony Stolarz made a stop just a few minutes before a score. I mentioned the stop that Stoli made on Greer, and then Sergei Bobrovsky also made an outstanding stop on a rare grade A chance that we saw. It wasn't really a lot of uh, quality right before the second goal for the Toronto Maple Leafs on a rare grade A chance by Bobby McMahon there, and then Toronto in that same shift in their offensive zone ended up in the back of their net, and just a missed opportunity off a great save from Sergei Bobrovsky. But the moment was that give and go play with Mackie Semiskevich and Jesper Boquist and a feed to Nico Mikkola. That was the moment where I knew the game was lost, because that was that big opportunity to tie the game and just to make it a whole new hockey game. And also there was even a few moments earlier, excuse me, there was a missed opportunity off the rush where Jesper got it to Mackie Semiskevich, and open net and just a flat out miss for Mackie Semiskevich. But I thought Mackie played a great game once again, getting with speed. And also I feel like even though he's younger than Carter Verhaeghe, I might be just so fresh in the moment for him, just based on how he's played versus Carter. Is his Mackey's game is built for the playoffs. I really truly believe that, and how he can get speed, find the open teammates. He fooled Austin Matthews, like I said, right before he got it to Sam Reinhart in the high slot to at least bring it to a 1-goal deficit. But I really do believe that it's more than just off puck stuff for him, and that how he can really get the puck on his stick and just create something versus what Carter Verhaeghe can do. It's his is more of the off puck stuff. Obviously, Carter Verhaeghe is definitely one thing that they do have in common, is that both are going to be more of the F1s on their line for them. But I just think in the long term, I just think Mackie Semiskevich's all around game is more built for it. And the thing is, it's a long term contract that starts next year for the Panthers. Is this a deal that Bill Zito is going to regret? I just keep wondering that. And this is the thing. I was one of those people screaming to the heavens, even in the offseason, to get a deal done for Carter Verhaeghe, but none of us saw this much of a regression, going all the way from 30 goals all the way to not even getting 20. Who would have thought that this would have been that much of that regression for Carter Verhaeghe? Thankfully, Sam Bennett this season has just been on a tear. By the way, I want to congratulate Sam Bennett on the night for getting to 50 points. I didn't even mention that yet. That it's now a career high for points. It first time ever getting 50 for him. So this is a new territory that he's in. Will the Panthers match that with a contract? I still yet to be determined there. But for that's the great thing about when one person slips in production, another person is making it up. Even in the 2023 season for Matthew Tkachuk, getting to 40 goals, even though there was a slight regression from him. Guess who was making it up for the goal production? It was Sam Reinhart with his 57 goals, and now even Sam Reinhart, even when we were talking about his floor prior to the contract extension, even if he regresses a little bit, we're happy at the 35 goal mark, and now he's 3 goals away from 40. But the difference between Sam Bennett and getting the production and Carter Verhaeghe is both of them aren't under contract long term. With Matthew Tkachuk's goal production going down from 23 to 24 and Sam Reinhart, although we were still questioning on whether Sam Reinhart was going to sign long term, we can look back and say, oh, thankfully that was the case for that. And Paul Maurice once again hasn't used the whole this player has an attitude because he's up for a contract. We haven't seen that line. We haven't heard that line once this year, at least from what I recall from watching all the media availabilities from the coach here. So a different tune going into this season and this time around for the Panthers here. But we're going to transition over to segment number 3, where we are going to discuss the worry meter that I put out a poll on the worry meter. Where is the fan base at, and where I am at when it comes to where the Panthers are with 7 games left. Yes, 7 games that we have before the postseason. We're going to discuss that and more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and the NCAA tournament is here, and FanDuel is giving you a chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. I got my eye on a few underdogs this year. FanDuel makes it easy to with spreads, totals, and game props. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's almost something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is easy to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. There's no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoop action all tournament long. Third and final segment here on this Thursday, April 3rd edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Thursday, where the Florida Panthers lose to the Toronto Maple Leafs by a final score of 3-2 in overtime. And now the Panthers are 4 points behind the Leafs for the top of the division. And realistically, it's 5 due to the tie-breaking scenarios. And it's slipping away as these games go on for them. And like I said, I'm not as upset about this one like I was in the Montreal one. That game was basically, for the most part, over with just one little lapse that ended up with not only not getting to 2 points, but it resulting in overtime and not getting that regulation win total up. So even then, even if you drop this one to Toronto, you still are within striking distance for them. And it doesn't look like the Panthers will be are actually in striking distance for them. But the good news is for the Panthers, 16-5-4 in 1-goal games. More times than not, they're getting the wins more than they are losses. And it's once again a case where the players are talking about how they played their game. Paul Maurice spoke about how it was a matter of, just like in January, that they were getting the good quality chances and it not resulting in wins, how it's good for the team. And and we saw how much of a turnaround the Panthers made from then. after things were just not going their way, and it usually happens around that time for them. But since March 11th against the Boston Bruins, which is really the start of how things falling off a little bit for the Panthers. As far as goals against per game, the Panthers are still giving up under 3. So that's encouraging when you know that the playoffs and these are low scoring, tight checking games. How the Panthers continue to force the outside, they cause their opposition to be very perimeter based. When I look at 2.90, which is I'm going to give you the exact number, that's kind of a sweet spot in my opinion, where you want to be when these games are high stress as far as the fan experience watching these things. And you're as a player, you're just taking things shift by shift. And for us, as far as us wanting the Panthers to get the division title here, the Panthers themselves, when they step on the ice, they're just focused at the in the present moment. They're not worried about whether it's at Amerant Bank Arena. Yeah, there's the factor of the traveling before the game, but once you hit that ice, you're just focused on your assignment then and there. So that's why baseball and hockey are the two sports when it comes to home ice or home field that it, for the most part, means the least is as far as the four major sports, because you just need one lucky bounce to go your way. And and that has, and sometimes it has nothing to do with home and road. Yeah, you have matchups that you want to put together, but look at this one with the Panthers not even having last change. They were able to contain the Matthews Marner line at least for good stretches of this one for them. So I put out a poll on X of your worry meter for for the Panthers' uh current stretch. And again, they haven't won a regulation game since March 13th against the Leafs. So 65 people, excuse me, voted on this one. And 32% of you say your worry meter is at 1 to 3. 43% of you said 4 to 6. 20% of you say 7 to 9, and then 5% of you say 10, and I put a lot of exclamation points on that answer. And I want to talk to the people who put it at a 10. I really want to have a conversation with you on why you think it's actually there, knowing that the situation for the Panthers is with the injuries and knowing that guys are hopefully going to be coming back. I mean, Barkov is day to day, as Paul Maurice spoke about in the media session after Nico Sturm. He said it before the Panthers even took the ice on, unfortunately, that collision in the neutral zone in Montreal. But the way also Paul Maurice worded it for Aleksander Barkov is he's going to play when he's healthy. He didn't I didn't see any signs of optimism that Barkov is going to even hit the ice when the Panthers practice again on this road trip right before they go up against the Ottawa Senators on Saturday afternoon for them. So it's going to be another game where Anton Lundell, like I said earlier, he's stepped it up in the top line assignments and just and taken those assignments and has thrived in them. And also Paul Maurice is calm about it. Ed Jovanowski even said it on the post game show, where you gotta be decently satisfied with the chances they created. Evan Rodriguez didn't seem discouraged by it, and honestly, with the situation of, like I said, with lack of home ice for the Panthers, if you find a way to at least get a split on the road with and preparing for Aaron Ekblad to come back, you're content about it. Imagine if they get 2 on the road, they're salivating. And this is hopefully for the Panthers. I did say a few days ago where, because of the fact that the Panthers have more back-to-backs than the Leafs and the Lightning, where the Lightning have 0, the Lightning have the easiest strength of schedule. I believe it's going to be set up for a Panthers Leafs first round. And that's the opponent that I'd rather have, although you don't choose your opponents. That's the opponent that I'd rather have in the postseason than Tampa Bay, because the pressure that's filled with Toronto. The Panthers have been there before. They're more comfortable versus I that Tampa Bay team is a scary one with how rejuvenated they look. But here's another thing for where the Panthers were at this point last year versus this year. And they were 5 points behind the Boston Bruins on April 6th last year and still found a way to win the division. And here's the thing about last year. They didn't have any head-to-heads against Boston after April 6th to find their way to jump into the division lead. And obviously, Boston lost 3 of their last 4 for them to slip into that 2-3 where they faced Toronto, and then Florida faced a Tampa Bay team that was, looking back at it, it was a gap year for them. And last year, Carter Verhaeghe returned in the last game of the season, game 82. Looks like that's going to be the case for Dmitry Kulikov coming back before the end. But here's the thing with it being a laundry list of injuries versus last year, whether it was only basically 2 guys who were out. I mentioned Verhaeghe and then Aaron Ekblad coming back in game 1 of the playoffs. That's not going to be the case this year. Add 2 more games to that. The head-to-heads help, but like I said, even last week, the fact that the Panthers would need to sweep these the next 2 head-to-heads in order to give themselves a chance. They need to sweep this weekend in order to give them a chance. And the fact that it's a team that's limping in coming into this, that's the worry that I have for the Panthers, even though the guys might be in the lineup, including a Matthew Tkachuk. How ready are they going to be for game speed? That's the thing for them. But at the same time, it's a clean slate for every single team in the NHL. Carter Verhaeghe struggled, and the best time of the year is coming, and who knows what happens here. And here's the Panthers' record once again. Although they've had a whole bunch of ups and downs, especially December and January is usually when they happen, but they're still 13-5-1 against playoff teams from the last 2 years. That's 27 points out of a possible 39 for them. 38, excuse me. So 27 out of 38 for the Panthers against playoff teams. So they wake up whenever those playoff teams come around for them. And like I said, the goals against are down, and Bobrovsky's on top of his game as well, which, by the way, congratulations to Sergei Bobrovsky. Game number 750 for him. And he's been the least of the Panthers' issues here. And Jacob Winans tweeted this. He didn't say it on the show, but he tweeted this saying that the Panthers better hope that Sergei Bobrovsky has a good amount of health going into the playoffs, because what we've seen at times from Vitek Vanacek has been also very head scratching for him. So that we are hoping for a good amount of health for Sergei Bobrovsky, because we know that even if things start to break apart and the Panthers lose a little bit of their structure, that we've seen Sergei Bobrovsky save the Panthers' bacon over and over again. And I'm going to end this with my worry meter, where it's at, and it's at a 5. It's not too low, it's not too high for the Panthers. The alarms are somewhat off. If they slip even more going into the weekend, then let's have a conversation about that coming out of the rest of this trip. And the fact that they are once again ending at home, and also ending with a 3-day gap before the postseason. And who knows, it could be 4, depending on if they start their game 1 on either the 19th or the 20th. That could be a full advantage to the Panthers, which clean slate when it comes to the postseason. So I'm not holding on any hopes for the division as of right now. I mean, it's less than a week until the Panthers and Leafs meet again, but I have the right to change my mind here. But as of right now, it's really about, as Evan Rodriguez says, fine-tuning the game. And there's been a whole bunch of these 1-goal games close as of late. So it seems that the Panthers are really cranking it up and getting back to a style of play that in the postseason, sometimes the puck bounces your way. And we've seen that over and over again, which again, you need some luck in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and the Panthers have had their fair share. So, and hey, who knows if it happens again this year. But that's going to do it for this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. On tomorrow's edition of the show, we are going to discuss Brad Marchand's fit and where and how comparable he is to another player that the Panthers acquired last year during their Stanley Cup run. We're going to discuss that on tomorrow's edition of the show. But in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Steel Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez, signing off. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Where's your team? Every day.